Welcome back to the Act 2 podcast, a podcast for the real-life working screenwriter. I am Tasha Hugh.
And I am Josh Hallman.
And as a reminder, Act 2 is a network and support group for the everyday working screenwriter. This podcast is just one of the things we do. Thank you for joining us here. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast. That way you don't miss out on our upcoming topics, because you'll get a little alert that says, hey, this is the cool thing they're talking about this week.
Boom.
You can also rate us, write a comment. That helps us. Also, DMing us is great. It's actually my preferred way of communicating with you all, because we love your questions and your topic suggestions or just updates on your writing life. That's all awesome. You can reach out to us at ActTwoWriters@gmail.com, all spelled out, or on our Instagram and Twitter at ActTwoWriters. You can also find me, Tasha, on Instagram at Story Thursday, and on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tasha 3.0.
Wow, I'm Joshua Hallman on Twitter. Josh Hallman on Instagram. This morning, I got an update about Facebook, and I was like, so-and-so sent a whatever. And I was like, oh my God, I haven't been on Facebook in years. Yeah. It was just some random thing.
I think it's for old people now.
Well, Tasha, what I guess I'm going to sign up. Time to get back on Facebook. How are you doing?
I'm good.
We're doing this. You have a hat on.
It's very cold where I am, so I've busted out my favorite beanie.
It's a heat wave in LA.
I much prefer it over here.
I've got some thoughts. Are we jumping into things?
Let's jump into This Week in Writing.
This Week in Writing.
I've been wanting to get this off my chest.
Oh, I can't wait. I love it.
First of all, I love Final Draft. Love it.
Okay.
This is so writer specific, which is great. I love Final Draft. I've used Final Draft my entire writing career. I don't know anything else except for Final Draft. They keep updating, which is great. I love all the changes, even though I don't use any of the changes, but I'm glad that they're there. I don't use the beat sheets. I don't use the navigator. I don't use any of it. I'd actually be very curious who does and who finds it helpful. However, there was a change in this most recent update to Final Draft. Final Draft 13.
Okay.
Dude, you have to sign in. Like, something happened where I wasn't on my computer, and you have to create a Final Draft account now. Like, when you get Final Draft 13, you put in your email, you create a password. I was like, okay, that's fine. I thought I had one of these anyway. I just kept doing it. And then a couple days had gone by, and then something, I don't know if I turned my computer off or what, but I got something that was like, you need to sign back in to your account before you can use it.
Before you can open a file?
Correct.
On your own desktop?
Correct. It's like a license. It feels like, I don't know what's happening, but Final Draft, it needs to be remedied. This is crazy. That's all.
That's a lot of files I got to open and a lot of passwords I got to now fucking put in.
Well, there's only... No. It's not one password per file.
I know, but it's like if it's always asking for a login every time I open a Final Draft document.
Well, to be fair, two things. Number one, I don't close Final Draft. It's just always kind of like open. I don't know how...
Okay.
Number two, it's only happened once where it was like, hey, you've been signed out. Now you have to sign back in. And number three, all your passwords are saved anyway. But the point is, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, well, what if I forget? It's like one of those things where you forget your password. You have to do a password reset. And it's just like, just let me write. It's hard enough to open the fucking page to just write words. Just why do I need a password now to do it? That's all I'm saying. If I'm missing something, like old man Facebook guy over here, and there's like some setting, someone let me know.
But I'm confused because it's not like you're logging on to something online when you
Correct.
Open it, right? It's not like a cloud program,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
All right, Final Draft. Come on. What are you doing? To Josh's point, it's hard enough to get to the point where you're like, all right, I'm ready. Let's open Final Draft.
I go
a password like that's enough to set me off. Like, I just won't even do it now.
It's like I'm on YouTube, I'm on Twitter, I'm reading the news, and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, it's time to open Final Draft. And then it's like password. I'm like, oh my, it's just one more hurdle.
I feel you. Okay, I have one that's equally as dumb. No offense.
No, trust me. I knew. I was like, I was going to message you about this, but I was like, I'm bringing this up on the podcast.
You're fired up. Ever since we met with your very good friend, physical therapist.
Melody, who you were messaging off to the side and you forgot her name already?
I didn't forget her name.
Okay.
I just sort of forgot her name. And I've been doing stretches in the, like 5 minutes of stretching in the morning and doing my shoulder rolls. I've been doing a lot of sitting and a lot of writing lately. I mean, every day, but in particular now. And my body's been hurting a little bit because of it, because I've been mostly sitting on the couch because the apartment that I have doesn't have a great sort of desk setup. So, you know, when you're on the couch, you're sitting, you're cross-legged, you're one leg under, one leg, it's all the things you do to just like sit comfortably on a couch. And it's hurting my body. So I started doing stretches. Guys, 5 minutes in the morning makes a huge difference.
It does.
Huge.
I do my stretches as well. And when I don't do them, I can feel it. And now I've got so many routines now in the morning. I'm like, I need to get up like 30
Can I
minutes
ask
earlier.
you about this? Because I'm only just starting to develop a routine and I'm really trying to make it a solid morning habit. I've bought an extra yoga mat so that I can like have it not out in the garage where I usually would do my stretches, but like in my office so that I can actually like, when I get up, I have no excuse. Like I can get on the ground and like do my stretches. What is your morning routine? How long does it take to do?
From like me just being happy or to getting to happiness?
To getting to like, I'm ready to start working and start my day.
It's about 25 minutes.
Of like activity, stretching.
Oh,
and
no.
activity?
Oh, 30, stretching, we're talking
Yeah.
like 7 minutes of stretching.
Okay.
Yeah. And it could be 5.
Okay. All right. So I don't feel so bad doing my 5.
No.
My 5 is a good starting place.
I thought you were talking about all the little other weird habits before the stretching.
I feel like there's an extra episode. I think we've done a habits episode, a weird Josh and Tasha writing habits episode. I have one other thing that's also stupid, but I liked it. A writer friend of mine, we were just talking about different people that we know, and she referred to someone as draft 55 so-and-so. And I was like, what does that mean? She's like, oh, I think of people as like drafts, like versions of themselves. So
Whoa.
like however old you are, that's like the draft that you're at, meaning like you're not fully formed, you're not your final draft yet, like you're still working on things. Like maybe you need to do a character pass or maybe you need a new plot twist you need to figure out a new plot twist in your next version. But I just like thought that was like such a helpful writerly way of thinking of people and yourself.
That's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah,
I like that.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. I hope we're not on our third act. it's all coming to a close.
Yep.
Okay. Tasha,
Yes.
main topic.
Yes.
We need to do it.
Framing devices. This topic comes to us from a tweet that Josh and I read where someone was trying to be very helpful and explain that if you want to tell a character story, but you have no idea what world or what story to tell, you just know you want these characters to get in a room and talk about a certain topic, that you should use a framing device to help guide what your story is. And the examples that this person gave were things like, I want to tell a story about a group of 40-something female friends, and therefore I'm going to use a framing device of a wedding. Mm-hmm. Or I want to tell a character story about a teenage boy and a grumpy old man who become unlikely friends. So I'm going to use the framing device of winter break at a boarding school. But when Josh and I were reading this, we started thinking, wait, that's not a framing device, right? Wait, have we been thinking about framing devices all wrong this entire time?
Yeah.
And then we Googled it, and we're right, and this person's wrong, and that's why we're talking about it.
Well, it's up for debate. I think we both saw this tweet, and it's one of those things where it made me question myself and be like, wait, do I know what a framing device is? Because it's just not something at least I don't think we go into writing scripts and be like, we're going to have this framing device run through this entire script, right? Like, so that's not something I actively think about, at least. And so we wanted to talk about it because I did not think a wedding, what was it? A wedding in like a storm or something?
Wedding and then a boarding school during winter break.
Correct. Yeah. To me, that's not a framing device.
No, that's a story. And I think what's interesting is when I did Google it and just Googled a little bit more, it's clear that a lot of people think it's what this guy was tweeting. And I agree with Josh. I think technically he's wrong, but I think it's really interesting the way he framed this idea of how he views framing devices, which I'll get into later whenever I think it's an interesting way of thinking about story. But technically, a framing device, according to Wikipedia, is a literary technique that serves as a companion piece to a story within a story, where there is an introductory or main narrative that sets the stage for a second narrative or for a set of shorter stories. In other words, the frame story leads viewers from a first story into one or more stories within it.
Yes.
And that is, I think, the way you and I have always thought the definition was in our heads.
Yes. And I think we're going to give some examples.
Yes.
And I've wrote a list of what makes a good framing device, or what makes a framing device good, excuse me. So yeah, we got to dive into this.
Yes. Before we do, though, can I just say that, like, he also, like, sent me this tweet also sent me sort of spiraling a little bit of, like, oh my God, like, have I been thinking about this wrong the whole way? But then also, like, it's so interesting to think about it the way that this person is thinking about it, even though it's technically wrong. There's something interesting to being like, okay, I know I want to tell this character story about this. This is what interests me. This is the theme that's interesting to me. These are the types of characters that are really interesting to me. But how the fuck do I get this drama to play out so that I can have these characters reacting to things and talking and living their lives?
Yeah.
Well, what if I put them in a wedding and then suddenly kind of it all becomes clear? So I think it's definitely a way to think about story. And when we get into, we're doing our series, about starting points for different writers. And the first one we did, the last one we did was location. And then we're going to do one about character as well. And I think this is an important way to think about how to tell a character story if what you only have is the character. So we'll get into that in another episode, but I did find it very interesting.
Yeah.
But I do think there's something important here, which is, this is not about like a right or wrong thing. It's not like, haha, we're right and he's wrong. But it's important when you get into meetings and you say the phrase framing device that you are using the technically correct term, because we want you to sound smart and to be on the same page as the other people in the room. So I do think it is important to mark that technically what we're about to describe is what is commonly considered a framing device.
Do we talk about how it's different from a plot device?
We certainly can. I mean, the way that I would describe it is that a framing device is a type of plot device that you can use. The same way voiceover is a plot device.
Yes.
Or flashbacks is a plot device. A framing device is another way to sort of structure your plot, where it's a device to access the main story, to give your audience a different way into your main story. It is a plot device in that way.
It's like a MacGuffin. It is the ring in Lord of the Rings. It is the rabbit's foot in Mission Impossible 3. Those are plot devices.
Yes, those are MacGuffins, which are also plot devices.
Yes, and those are... Okay, I just wanted to kind of clear that up, because that bleeds into where this tweet was coming from, where everyone's going to this wedding, and everyone's... that's your plot. You're going there. That's what's happening. So...
Yeah, I think the way to think about a framing device is literally in the term framing device, where it is a frame that exists around your story. It borders your story. It keeps your story tucked in nice and neat. And it makes sense to me that the story is within the borders of whatever this edge is.
Yeah.
And that edge idea will become clear as we start to give examples of successful framing devices.
Yeah, I read that as well online, and it's so silly because it's so obvious that, oh yeah, that's what a frame is. And it was described that way. It's like, imagine you have a frame. That is your framing device, and a story lives inside of that.
Yeah. Like in the wedding example, the wedding would be the story inside, and a frame might be a character after the wedding looking back on the wedding as a story and opening the movie with being like, man, that wedding in 1998 was a riot, am I right? And then we go into the wedding in 1998, and then at the end she comes out of it in the modern day and says, right guys, that wedding in 1998, what a blast.
Yeah.
That's the frame.
All right, so should we get into some examples?
Let's go.
Okay. You know what? I'm just going to do what I think we both have on our list as a perfect example.
It is the perfect example.
And so
I think I know.
It's just a little backstory. When we were getting ready for this episode, we were like, let's just pick things that we love, or movies that we love that use framing devices. And I was getting ready to write you and say, ooh, I can't wait to talk about this one. And I was like, no, I'm not going to say it. Number one, I wanted to see if you would say it. Number two,
you didn't want to give me the
I didn't want to give it to you. Only to have you text me 10 minutes later to say, I call The Princess Bride.
Because I knew you were going to do it. I wanted to do it.
So, The Princess Bride.
Yep.
Freaking classic movie. Just a nice, just an adventure. We got Fred Savage. We got Carrie Elways. Do you want me to set the scene of?
I mean, obviously, I want to set the scene.
Okay, go for it.
That's
Go for it.
Fine.
No, go for it.
All right. I'm so glad you asked.
Oh, cool.
The framing device here is that Fred Savage is sick, and his kindly old grandfather, Peter Falk, who played the original Columbo, comes over to read to him on his sick day. And Fred Savage is so annoyed. He wants to spend all day playing video games. Who doesn't? Please, can this old man just fucking leave him alone with his stupid books and his stupid old stories? And then the book that Grandpa busts out to read to little Fred Savage is, of course, Princess Bride, the story of the movie. And then every now and again, we cut out of the movie back to Fred Savage's room where he's asking his grandpa more questions about the story, or he's arguing with how the story is going. So Fred Savage, who just wanted to play video games, is now invested, and he's asking a lot of the same questions the audience is asking, which makes it feel extra fun, and that's the setup of the framing device.
If you haven't seen Princess Bride, you need to see Princess Bride. But why I think it works and what's so perfect about it is Fred Savage, like you were saying, is asking the questions, but Fred Savage is excited about it and therefore making the audience excited about it. And I think this is why it's a perfect example, is because it's not just like the grandpa telling the story. It's cutting to Fred Savage sick in bed, who's suddenly becoming enthralled with this adventure that's happening. And like, wait a minute, Grandpa, wait, what happened? Wait, what happened with this? Oh, and then he's like calling out parts of the story along the way. And I just think that's what really kind of separates it, where he is acting as the audience while this story is being told.
Yes, agree. I agree. And I think another purpose that a framing device does in general and does really well in this movie is it allows you to tell maybe a slightly more heightened kind of ridiculous story a little bit, because the Princess Bride, the story within the story, is just swashbuckling adventure romance at its height, right? It's and particularly for the audience then, as well as for an audience now, you kind of can't tell that story earnestly without it feeling old-fashioned or a little silly. But because William Goldman, the writer of the book as well as the movie, puts a framing device around it where he's like, I acknowledge that you're going to think this is silly. Therefore, I'm going to have Fred Savage say out loud as a framing device, this is silly.
Yeah.
And then we get into the story and it is silly in the best possible, awesomest way.
Yeah.
And then occasionally we'll have Fred Savage be like, nope, that's silly. Because we, the audience, are kind of thinking that. Because we're a grizzled audience who doesn't tell these big swashbuckling romances anymore. But then he gets us. And this is why it's so layered. William Goldman, the writer, gets us at some point in the movie of Princess Bride. We buy in, and all we are is just invested in this crazy romance adventure with a six-fingered man and the dread pirate Roberts, like all of these crazy tropes that are just like so crazy. We become invested the same way Fred Savage does. So yes, we're on the same ride as Fred Savage, but it also gives William Goldman the space to kind of be like, here's a crazy story. It's not real though. It's in a book that's being read to Fred Savage. It's not totally real.
Yeah.
But here's an amazing story you're never going to be able to forget. And that's just so fucking cool. And such a great use of a framing device. And is also, by the way, when you start thinking of framing devices, why you might need it, this may be a reason why you may want a framing device for your story.
Yes. It has the things that I wrote, what I think make up kind of like this isn't my list, but these are like, this is what The Princess Bride has, which I kind of wrote down here, is flashbacks. Film starts in the present, flashes back to this story. Narration, obviously the grandpa, the story within the story, grandpa's telling the story, and then it bookends, and people arc, and the characters inside the movie arc, and Fred Savage arcs.
Fred Savage arcs. Yeah, it's like it's the perfect framing device for that reason as well. There is a story going on within the outer story. It's so good.
Okay. Another example. Go for it, Tasha.
No, that was technically yours, even though I talked a lot.
Yeah, that was technically mine. Therefore, you go.
Okay. Saving Private Ryan is my next one. This
yes.
has a more kind of traditional framing device where it bookends the movie. So in Princess Bride, you get to the framing device a couple times through the movie. This is more traditional. It is literally a bookend, a frame, where we open on Arlington National Cemetery, where this old man with no name visits a grave with his family, and there's some focus on his family, which you understand why later. At the end of this framing sequence, he crumbles to his knees in front of one of the graves, and he starts weeping. And then it zooms into him, and the sound effects take over, and he's clearly remembering something, some battle from before, and then we fade into that battle, and now we are in the movie within the frame. And that movie, of course, within the frame is Tom Hanks leading his unit to save Private Ryan, who's played by Matt Damon. And that story is emotional and exists entirely on its own. It really does. But is it better because of the framing device? Fuck yeah. Because you save Private Ryan, it is emotional, it is terrible, and in the end, Tom Hanks tells him, make it worth it, earn this. And then we cut back to the framing device, and we realize who this old man was who's kneeling and crying at this gravesite. It is Matt Damon, saved, all grown up. He now has a family. He's lived his best life, fulfilling the command of Tom Hanks, who spent his life literally to save him. And what a framing device. Man, it opens with questions, and then by the end they're answered, and not only answered but emotionally fulfilling. It's so good.
Yeah. And I can't remember, they don't cut back to, like, it's a bookend, right? It's an open and a close, which I think is great, because that just lets the story tell itself, everything that you just said. And I think that's actually a really perfect example how it's different from The Princess Bride, because you almost forget that the framing device exists, which I think is another beautiful way. If you can pull that off, you're golden.
Yep.
My next example is the greatest love story ever told.
Ever After?
No. Titanic.
That is also a framing device.
Ever After?
Yeah.
How does it start?
It opens like years in the future, and an artist has brought a painting to someone. He's like, oh, that's my grandmother. Let me tell you the story of my grandmother.
Oh, this sounds exactly like Titanic, which is mine.
It is! Oh, okay.
All right. The beauty of Titanic is that it starts with Bill Paxton looking for the heart of the ocean to find this picture of a woman, Kate Winslet, painted wearing the heart of the ocean. Then they find this older woman who claims that it is her in the picture. And now we're off and running. And so we set up like the first 20 minutes of Titanic as just like this incredible setup. And what I was thinking about, what's interesting is the heart of the ocean is also a plot device. So it's like a plot device with the framing device. I mean, I love Titanic. And so I don't have to get into the plot of Titanic, but they're cutting back to the story, and the story of the older woman telling the story of how she got the necklace because her name is different. So it's kind of this mystery. And this is also a very perfect example of a framing device to me because it arcs the older woman. She has closure. She obviously tosses this $1 billion thing into the ocean at the end of the movie that I don't know anyone in their right mind would actually do, but that's her arc. Obviously tells the story of Jack and Kate. So I think this is maybe the best use of a framing device that I could think of, because you're invested in the older woman so much and her story, and then it hurts even more of when you find out what happened at the end, and she could have actually gotten on the floating door, but that's for a different debate.
Yes.
I love it.
I don't have much to say because I've only seen this movie a couple times.
I thought you were going to say once.
I think it's more than once.
Can we unpack this?
I find it to be painful. I don't enjoy that ride. I don't want to rewatch it. It is not a happy ending. It's not lovely. I don't like it. I don't even remember the old woman except as like
What?
beginning and an end. I didn't know she came in the middle. I don't remember that.
I've seen this movie like 25 times.
Really?
I love
But
this
it's
movie.
so hard to watch. It's so awful.
It's like it's peak James Cameron. He's just at his best. He's doing a love story. You got action. I don't understand what's happening. The other thing, by the way, I don't want to go down this road, but you told me you've only seen Shawshank once.
No, that's incorrect. I've seen that many times. I just don't remember it as much as you do.
Oh, you don't find the appeal of Shawshank like
I never said that either. I think it is a perfect movie. It is exceptional. Again, I just am not like as affected by it as you have been. And it's not as memorable to me as it is for you.
Not to steal your thunder here, but Shawshank has voiceover from Morgan Freeman, of course.
Yes.
Framing device?
I don't remember it enough to know.
No, yes, because
Is it?
I believe so. I believe he gets sat down in the beginning.
And he tells a story of his buddy.
Yeah, Andy Dufresne.
Yeah, Josh said that name the other day as a reference to something when we were brainstorming, and I was like, I don't get that reference, and he lost his shit. I was like, I forgot his name. It's a great movie. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, you're up.
All right. I'm going to end with a TV show example of a framing device because they exist across media. And my TV show example is White Lotus. And I've only seen season 1, so I'm only going to speak about season 1. But there's this framing device that is so genius that I believe, I've been told, he uses across all seasons. So it is a framing device that he, has repeated. But it is the framing device where there is a murder. And then we go into the story that will eventually tell us who was murdered. So the framing device in season 1 starts at the airport where an older couple is talking to some young guy who is clearly not in a good headspace. They talk about how, he had just been at the White Lotus Hotel. How was it? We heard there was a murder there.
Yeah.
And then we look out the window and we see a casket being brought off the plane. And then we go into the story of the White Lotus Hotel and the guy's experience there, as well as other people that he came in contact with. And we're wondering who the hell died. Similar to that Saving Private Ryan example, right? Where you're asking questions, who is that guy? You're asking questions now, who died? Who's in that casket? Who was the person who murdered him or her? And because of that framing device, it's so cool because it makes us sit down and care about the story of these terrible people when otherwise I might not have watched this. If this wasn't like a quote unquote murder mystery in a way, like I don't think I would have cared to see these terrible people being terrible to each other. But now I'm leaning in because now I'm considering myself a detective. I'm trying to figure out, okay, is this the murderer? Is this someone who could actually kill someone? Does this person die? Would I be happy if that person died? And it becomes this really interesting engagement from the audience that probably wouldn't have been there if the story was told straight. So that is another really fantastic example of a framing device really helping you tell your story and get audiences to lean in.
This is really interesting you say this because when you told me you were thinking about White Lotus, I thought to myself, that's not a framing device.
Oh, why?
I just felt like it's more of a framing technique.
What is the difference?
It's not full device.
How so?
Because I feel like if you took out that first scene of the murder, White Lotus would still exist as White Lotus.
Well, you can say that about Saving Private Ryan. You could technically say that about The Princess Bride as well.
You think if you started The Princess Bride in the sequence that it is, the editing, everything about The Princess Bride.
Yeah, they have too many Fred Savage interjections that act as time jumps.
So that's what I'm saying. That's why I feel like a framing device can sometimes be a cheat to time jump something.
It could be. I think that's a good example of it doing so. But a frame can also just be a bookend, like with Saving Private Ryan.
So open and closed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another framing device, which it sort of speaks to this issue you're having as well, is True Detective. The framing device is we are in the future talking to, oh my God, these two detectives.
McConaughey and Harrelson? Yeah.
Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. These two detectives, and then we're going back into their story as they're telling us the story. So if I was pitching that to someone to buy, I would say, we have this story of, two detectives who are investigating this seemingly supernatural series of murders, but the framing device is that we're accessing it through the modern day, where they're giving interviews to the FBI about that case. So that's a framing device that sets that kind of story in motion. So that's the same idea. It's just a different kind of framing device.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know.
Framing technique and device are the same.
I just there's something about the character arcing to me that there's like no closure in like the episode 1 of White Lotus.
Well, I think what's interesting about that is that, similar to the Saving Private Ryan example, there's not an arc to that character as well, but we understand that opening character more now after the course of the show/movie. So we understand that guy when we first meet him, he's like kind of a jerk, but like he's clearly upset. Like maybe the person who died is his mom or his girlfriend or his wife or someone, and that's awful for him. And that's probably why he's upset. But then in the end, when we cut back to the airport, we realize he's just a fucking asshole and there is no redemption for that piece of shit. And his wife is alive. Oh God, great. Like that to me is like the arc is sort of the audience's opinion of him.
Yeah. Okay. It's like Big Little Lies. Same exact thing. It starts with a murder, and then you meet all these people. I don't know if you've seen that, it was on HBO.
Yeah.
It's very similar. It's just kind of like this affluent families that live in, I think, San Francisco or outside of San Francisco. But yeah, anything that starts with the murder. Okay. This is why it gets a little complicated, actually. This actually is a perfect reason why I questioned myself for that tweet. I was like, wait a minute. Can I define what a framing device is? Because I'm a little fuzzy, to me, about what a pure framing device is.
I think it's clear it's not the story of the movie, which is a wedding, right? It is a device to access the story of the wedding. Just
real quick, television, which I won't get too far into this, but How I Met Your Mother, that's like super duper heavy. You can get away with that because I think it's sitcom. But what I wanted to ask you and throw you a curveball on is Knives Out a framing device? Does that use a framing device?
What's the framing device for Knives Out?
The framing device would be the interrogations of Knives Out. Of if it started, like in Knives Out, they just do the interrogation in the beginning and then we're off and running and the movie unfolds. I could see a different version of that where someone is, the detective is asking the people the question, and it bookends with him asking all of them the same question.
I think it's a framing device if we're interrogating, we go into the story of the murder, we come back out and we're interrogating again. So like they're on two different timelines, right? The interrogation is looking back on the story of the movie, which is the murder, and then we come back out to an interrogation and discovery. But that's not how Knives Out is presented. While it has this interrogation piece, and while we do have flashbacks that go to the night of the party and other times, the story continues after the interrogation in real time.
Okay.
Josh is unconvinced.
All I'm saying is that
the actual technical definition of a framing device.
Because I feel like that overlaps with there's a murder that's set up in White Lotus, and now we're off and running. And
I don't think it does at all.
In what? In White Lotus?
Knives Out is a totally different story plot structure. There's no framing device in Knives Out.
I mean, there's a murder.
The interrogations in that version are just part of the story. The murder is just part of the story.
Okay. Hey, maybe not. It's a little gray. All right, so after all that, this is what I thought makes a good framing device. This is my list. I'm going to close out with, and you can interject and disagree. It adds emotional or thematic depth. Okay. Gives structure without interrupting the flow.
Okay.
It raises the stakes. Can sometimes add suspense. I was thinking of Princess Bride on that one. It feels important and integral to the story, and I think that's pretty much it. And bookends. Of course, it bookends, opens and closes. Those were just a couple things that I jotted down that I felt were like very, very important to framing devices.
I also will add, which maybe you kind of had in there, I guess, it reframes the story, literally and figuratively. So the True Detective example is a great one. You could just tell the story of these two detectives solving a crime, but without the framing device of them in modern times doing interviews, that story has different meaning. So it reframes the meaning of a story.
Totally. And I feel like, I mean, how many times have you written a script before that had like a narration or started? You're like, I'm going to narrate this thing. And it's like, you don't need
never
narration.
had a narrator.
I don't know. I've definitely thought about it, but it's only because I couldn't figure out the plot. And it's like, it was like a cheat, you know, and that was just for me personally. But I think it's important to, if you're using a framing device and you're writing something and you're like, oh, I'm going to use this and this as a framing device. As a writer, I think you need to ask yourself, why is it important to the story if I have a framing device?
Can I throw another curveball into this before we end?
Oh, here we go.
Because you're right, there is gray area. Bullet Train. Do you think Bullet Train has a framing device? Because you could I could see myself pitching to you, Josh, I have this movie set on a train where a bunch of assassins are unknowingly after the same thing and hilarity/action ensues as they all unknowingly go after the same briefcase. Mm-hmm. But the framing device is Sandra Bullock, the handler of Brad Pitt, bringing us into the story. And it ends with her picking him up.
Right.
And she gives us information through the middle to also like help the story along plot-wise, because it is just a bunch of assassins who don't know a lot of information all put together on one train. So Sandra Bullock is giving us, in some ways, a frame. She's outside of the action in a way, giving us intel. And in some ways, that's a framing device, but it's also part of the movie.
I agree.
It's not a different timeline.
It's not. No, I definitely agree. And I think there's certain things like that movie gets away with a lot because of its quirkiness and how eccentric it is. And I think when you have a movie like that, you can get away with a few more things. And like the Sandra Bullock, like those phone calls might not have worked in a different kind of movie, but maybe it did.
I agree. And I also think it serves a purpose too. Mm-hmm. It serves the purpose of giving us vital information that the characters within the story of the frame do not have. So it feels very necessary in that way. Presumably the same as Titanic, even though I can't really recall. I feel like the old lady probably gives like perspective on something or like helps us jump time a little bit. I don't know. Yeah. I don't remember.
I guess in conclusion to all of this, that person who wrote the tweet, yeah, is probably right.
No, it is not correct.
I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I was trying to arc. That definitely is not something we agree with. But I do think there's a little gray area.
Just in gray area on how to use it, but I
Correct.
think clarity.
Yes.
On what it's supposed to do.
And this is why we brought up some examples, because those, I think. Oh, and you were gonna. We talked about the Wonder Years framing device.
Yeah, the Wonder Years is a family sitcom from the 1980s, late 1980s, early 90s. And it has Fred Savage again, who is an older character looking back on his younger Wonder Years. And he has voiceover. So it's like a plot device. It's like a narrative device, but it's also a framing device because it reframes the story of this family sitcom that you're watching because you're getting perspective of the older character looking back. So that's, another great example.
All right. We're done.
This was a unexpectedly heated topic. I'm hot now.
I
have this beanie and now I'm hot.
I'm actually getting a little chilly.
Son of a bitch. All right. Quote of the day. When I'm writing a first draft, I'm constantly reminding myself that I'm simply shoveling sand into a box so that later I can build castles. Jordan Peele. Please remember to rate and subscribe. Follow us at ActTwoWriters for more awesome writing stuff. You can follow me, Tasha, at Story Thursday on Instagram or on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tasha 3.0.
I'm Joshua Hallman on Instagram, Josh Hallman on Twitter. Oh, flip that. No, just flip that.
Wow. And as always, the Act Two podcast is a production of Act Two, a network and support group for the everyday working screenwriter. This episode was edited by Paul Lundquist.